I have learned that to be with those I like is enough. Walt Whitman. Bending Not Breaking, Season 4, Episode 11, Skeletons in the Closet. And we're back with another episode of Bending Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine.
And this is Ben.
And what a season it's been. We're getting to the end.
Episode 11,
yeah,
y'all.
we're
Out of
almost
12.
there.
We're almost there.
This is not. They do not have these 20-episode arcs going on.
Yeah, but they're so packed.
But we are about to build
cool
a whole new universe. So they
whole
say.
New universe.
That's fun.
Yeah. Oh, your Avatar Studios.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
super
been announced
cool.
as we are recording because we record earlier than the episodes come out.
True.
Because we're planners.
True.
Sometimes.
Debatable.
Anyways,
Today
today is also special.
We have another special guest.
Friend of the podcast.
Friend of the pod. However, this friend of the pod you might recognize as someone who's been with us before, right? So, friends, family.
Well, I said friend of the pod, Ben.
Yeah, but like you can be a friend of the pod and not have been on the podcast before.
That's fair. All right.
Anyway, we have Cameron back joining us, and we're so excited you're here.
Hello.
After that long like attempt to bring you in.
Yeah, I know. I thought honestly you were setting me up to say I'm Cricket Lee again.
Yeah.
I was thinking
the
about
guest
it.
we've had before. I was like, ooh, should I try this intro again? I won't. I think it's better for everyone that I don't.
And I believe the last time you were here was season 3, episode 6, which would be
The Avatar and the Fire Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a great episode. So go back to that if you have not listened to that.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole lot of fun. We have fun here. This is a podcast for fun.
Do we have
and
fun?
for learning. I have fun. You can sometimes be a little bit of a crumb-yum.
Just because you're a party pooper and I try to keep things on track doesn't mean that I'm not having fun.
I believe that means you're stopping me, Max, typically from having the fun, but
Speaking of Max is
he's here.
No microphone because, we
away
decided
from
to
him.
take that away from him.
I'm
as
borrowing
punishment.
it. Sorry.
You're the Ursula to my Ariel.
Yep. Stolen your voice today. It's in my seashell.
she is terrifying.
Fun fact, that's Sunshine's most terrifying villain.
When other kids turned off the lights and hopped into their beds and put the covers over their head to get away from the boogeyman that was under their bed, I was always convinced that it was actually Ursula under the bed, and that she had very bad aim because she had so many tentacles to get me and never got me because I was very sneaky.
Great singing voice, though.
No, she stole it. She stole it from other
No,
people.
Pat Carroll's voice.
Oh, she was wonderful, but she's not Ursula.
Pat Carroll? Yeah.
I mean, she is the actress of Ursula, but she's not the Ursula that was under my
I
bed.
see. No. The Ursula under your bed probably
That's a
did
very
not.
different Ursula.
Probably did not have a good singing voice.
But shouts to Morgana. She really had to follow up
Oh my
from
gosh.
Ursula. You don't remember Ursula's little sister?
Yeah, the same voice actress did in the sequel with Ariel's
I didn't
daughter.
know that.
Yeah.
Melody.
I've seen that once.
They
so-
literally introduce her and they're like,
It's
Ursula's crazy sister.
Yeah. Yes. Her mom apparently loved Ursula more, was what we learned out in that movie, but it's actually kind of watchable.
It is, as far as Disney sequels go.
Is
Is it on
all
Disney
right.
Plus right now?
I'm sure it is.
Probably.
Yeah. But we're talking about Korra. We're talking about the Legend of Korra,
Skeletons in the Closet.
which is we learn a whole lot about people's past.
Yeah, about
things
family.
Yes, which is interesting because that's the lens, Ben.
Yeah, it is. Cameron, you chose this lens.
Yeah,
You
I
sound-
did.
That's right.
Yeah, tell us why. What was behind that decision?
I mean, I think it's obvious when you get into the plot of the episode that family is a big factor in revelations that occur this week on Korra. But as I was watching it I saw that this really kind of encompasses both aspects of family, like your chosen family that can be very good and supportive, and then family by blood that can be really toxic, and you may need to step away from that situation.
We're going to dive into both of those aspects.
Speaking
for
of the
sure.
plot of the episode, Ben, you've got 30 seconds to give us a
I don't
recap.
know why you constantly try to put this burden on me. It is your responsibility to
Ben,
do this.
The listeners know that you have the odd episodes.
When you say
and
no,
I have the
I think you
even
assume
episodes.
that they're keeping track because they know that you're supposed to be doing this.
So you're telling me you're trying to pull a fast one over on the listeners.
I would never. I'm trying
30
to
seconds on the
pull a
clock,
fast one
and
on
away
you.
we go.
Okay, so there's like, they're in this. Okay, starting over. Okay, so
No, 25
General
seconds
Iroh
on
is
the
like
clock.
grandson now retired, and now he's like, oh my god, General Tyler Zuko, but it's the voice of like Dante Basco, which is really cool. Anyway,
Nothing to do with the
homeless
plot.
gruel. Bolin's like yum. Asami spits it out. Mako and Korra connect. Then Iroh shows up. They fall into a trap. Hiroshi has airships, and then Korra has
10
beast
seconds.
water mode, and then the fleet is taken out. And then there's a second wave, and then Asami like, oh my god, we're gonna take out Dad, and then there's goodbyes between Mako and Bolin, and then it's really, and then Tarlok, and then oh my god, the
Stop.
story of Yukon. I almost got there.
No, you did
The
not.
most important stuff in the
You made it
episode.
through 11 minutes of the episode.
Just gone.
Well, Cameron's going to do 30
It
seconds
was,
to the back half.
it was really important that I let people know that Dante Basco also voiced a character.
I think that is important, but what wasn't important
Thank you,
to
Cameron.
me was the gruel conversation.
That was really important.
I kinda
Asami
disagree.
spits out that food that was generously given to her.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
Pabu was the only one that ate it.
I mean,
Bolin.
Bolin loved
Well, he
it.
says it was good, and then he's like, and he puts it down on the floor.
Anyways,
Yeah.
the wonderful recap, Ben. And by wonderful, I mean it was fine.
That was a great recap of half of the episode.
If you had a whole minute to do it, it would have been great.
Y'all are so good at making me feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside.
All
Family?
right. Family.
Family.
What's
Yeah.
family? What is family?
Oh, well, you asked that rhetorically, but I think you have an answer, so why don't you tell us?
When I was going through the definitions, you have pretty much the standard ones of like, bloodline. And the one that I like that it kind of centers around that is all descendants of a common ancestor. And I like to think of ancestor as not necessarily like a familial ancestor, but almost like a guiding principle. And in that way, I think it kind of comes into more of this found family type of thing, because I think even in blood families, if their guiding principle of love and belonging and these things are the same, then blood family can be that supportive family for you. But you don't want to discredit the importance of found family and what that truly means as well. And so I like thinking of ancestor as not necessarily like grandfather or grandmother, but almost like a cornerstone value.
I mean, we talk a lot about this in our season 3 episode 11 with Indira on the
Firebending Masters.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about ancestral wisdom and legacy and family there. So I think it's worth just, if you want a deeper dive into that, you can probably check there. But for now, what else? What did we miss?
Episode 13.
13, excuse me. What else did we miss in terms of what family is?
I think that as a queer person, I really identify with the idea of chosen family, in that you can find your circle of people who you trust and respect and who you love and who love and support you. That they can really become your familial safe place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that chosen family is important, especially for people who find it difficult to fit in and belong with their biological family, right? And so anytime a person experiences difficulty belonging, what emerges is a need to have a place where you do belong. And so when you have the opportunity to choose who those people are, it makes it all the more valuable, and it makes it just like that choice becomes inherently more precious. And so, yeah, I think that
and that they chose you too, like
that
it's a
reciprocal
mutual,
love, that mutual love. I think that's really important, and we definitely see that in the episode. We see a lot of chosen family happen.
I mean, right away we start off with the family dinner, the stew. Gruel kind of concoction in the tent community.
All the best garbage in the
Republic
City.
I want to lift up Gamu, I believe his name is.
From the first episode.
From the very first episode. He has always had kind of this welcoming presence. And I think that he navigates this idea of, it ends up being more about classism than it almost does between like benders and non-benders for him. He's like, no, we are all struggling under this system together. And so like, we're here together and we make it work, and it's very harmonious. And I think that it's, for him, he's always just kind of had that presence even from the first episode of
and
hey,
it's kind
like,
of
welcome.
He continues to fulfill that role of in the first episode, he serves as a welcome to the audience and to Korra to Republic City, and the idea is that like things aren't as great as they look. And here, he kind of continues to serve that function in a way that like Amon's equality may not really be equality for everybody.
Well, and that's something that's really important to, I think, dive into that I don't think we've touched on this season before, is just the idea of equality when when you take it from one perspective, equality of me giving out as a government, for instance, everyone's going to get the same thing. What that denies is that people are in differing positions and therefore need different things, right? And so how do we distribute in a way that gets everybody to an equal result rather than giving out equally, right? And so that's the difference between equity and equality. But at the same time, like what that forces us to confront is that we have to distribute unequally to land on an equal result, right?
When it also allows us to, if we're doing it the way that it should be done, it allows us to understand and identify the barriers that create that inequity in the first place. Theoretically, right? So like I feel like most people have seen the meme of the people trying to watch the sports game over the fence, and it's they're all different heights, so we give them all different size boxes so they can all see versus removing the barrier.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also part of that if we're getting into American politics, this idea of like what are the needs that people have, we've identified that these are barriers that are in place that cause this need in the first place. So here's how we should help them until we get rid of the barrier and that is causing this in the first place.
Well, and it's interesting to think about like Amon's like target here. He is very much in the bending versus non-bending perspective. But what his perspective fails to capture is this group that we see in this episode that's like we're both benders and non-benders and we're still struggling, and it has nothing to do with bending. It has to do with other things which would still be true in Amon's society.
And I wonder how much of that comes from him being on the privileged side
Exactly.
of the spectrum which he hopes to make equal.
Exactly.
He is a bender, but he wants to make things equal as far as bending versus non-bending. And
which is why we have to lift up the voices of people who are not privileged rather than trying to change things from a lens of privilege, right?
We've said it before. He was never. There is a need for an equalist movement. He was never the person that needed to take up that mantle to do it.
Yeah.
Especially under the guise of all the things that he had going on in his life.
I think it was the means to an end for him.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So
Gamu created a nice little family environment. Was what
Yeah.
I wanted to lift up initially. Was
yeah.
it feels like he's doing his best down in the caverns.
Well, I'm curious for a distinction. What is the difference between cultivating a community versus cultivating a family? Like, what's the difference between community and family? Because I think that they have a lot in common, but there's nuance there, and I'm wondering what that difference is.
I see that. I think in this particular situation, he created a community that was a safe space for the family we've been following as the audience, Team Avatar, to hide, to take refuge. I think the key distinction between a community and a family, I think, at least in regards to the chosen family we're talking about here, again, is that obligation. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but the obligation of like, we're in a community and I'm going to support you, versus the chosen family aspect of we are going to lean on each other because that's how our relationship is.
I think what's emerging for me as I think about the difference is the level of intimacy that you're willing to go into in community versus in family. I feel like for me with family, there is a greater sense of intimacy like than there is in even the best of communities, which can be very intimate, but I think that
We're saying this in a sense of if families are the supportive environment that they are supposed to. that we hope that
correct.
they can.
Yeah. Exactly. In the chosen family format for me, because I feel like, yeah, it's that sense of intimacy is, I think, a key thing for me.
Yes, that was a better way of saying what I was trying to say.
I'm sure there are other nuances.
It's almost like the
that,
Brene
right?
Brown, like who's on your 1-inch sheet, right?
I know her.
Yeah, you've mentioned her before.
Who's this?
Yeah, and I think we've mentioned this practice before, but she has this 1-inch sheet of paper that have the 5 names of people that she knows are her first kind of go-tos. To challenge her, to support her, to be there, to push back on her, like all of these things. And I wonder if that requires a level of intimacy. That doesn't mean that other people in the community you don't care about or you couldn't potentially get to that place, but to have that type of level of intimacy feels more like family.
Right. And the community is kind of a bit better external support system, whereas a family is more internal.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm. If y'all are listening, and clearly y'all are listening, but for those of you who are listening,
If you're not listening,
if you want to
call
help
in.
us like
We haven't
clarify,
turned the volume down, but are one of our few fans that just love giving us the play count, but don't actually care about the content.
yeah. Anyway, if you don't mind, if you have an idea or perspective on what family is and maybe the difference between family and community, I'd love to hear another perspective. Just because I don't think we've quite got it yet, but I also want to move on to other cool things that are in this episode. So send something in. Let us know. Voicemail under 2 minutes.
Call in. We're standing by.
Yeah. All right.
Ben's cell phone number is...
No. While I appreciate you all, you can find me on, BNB_pod. Thank you. All right. Okay. So, you have a moment?
Yeah, actually, talking about chosen family, Pabu and Naga Pet's role in a family stood out to me
I didn't even
in
write
the
this
first
down.
half of this episode. Pabu in that he covers for Bolin by eating the food that Bolin does not want to eat. After Bolin kind of was like, yes, it's great. Here.
Yeah.
And then Naga loves Korra so much that usually you see a lot of like pets don't want to be separated from their person. But in this one, Naga seems to grasp that Korra needs her to do this mission with Bolin and Asami. And just...
Potentially sees them as family as well at this point.
Right, by this point.
Yeah.
I think that pets are really
Cool.
important.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that there's a lot that pets teach us and a lot that pets give us. But it's interesting because, not everybody's a pet person, but for those of you who are pet people, I wonder when we have, like, my dog has been a pretty integral piece for me during the pandemic. And the reason is I've had so little physical contact that, humans, I don't know if you all, we are biologically wired for physical contact. And so for me,
Max is saying that is not his love language. Physical touch is not his love language.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be just your love language, but in general, like physical contact, importante. Anyway, that's beside the point. Moral of the story is I haven't been getting a lot of physical contact. And so, like, how do I get that? I get it through my dog. And so I found myself, after a month or two of pandemic time, it was like, okay, I wake up in the morning and then I would be able to like go and just like hug my dog and just like literally just like cuddle, just there, just like get the cuddles in. And then before bed, I'm like, okay, it's been a long day. I'm just going to go hug the dog and just let that sink in. And I think that's just been a really important tool for me and for, not a familial term, but a tool for me to get through this feeling of isolation, right? And I wonder, like, how much of that is just in my head, but also how much of that is just a relationship that exists. But yeah, pets are important.
Well, and have you ever heard the kind of work that's been done that says the grief level of losing a pet is the equivalent to the grief level of losing a family member? And so, like, you build relationships, even though they are nonverbal relationships, you build these relationships with pets over time. And
I recently saw a TikTok that didn't cite any sources, y'all. However,
welcome to TikTok, Ben.
What they said was essentially, and I tried to look this up, but I couldn't find any corroborating evidence.
They didn't cite an academic journal?
No, not one. But I'm interested.
Wait till you get to maskless TikTok, Ben.
Listeners, I'm new to TikTok, y'all. This is new for me. But very genuinely interested in this. So if you know where it is, listeners, send us the link. But there's an idea that we grieve over the fictional characters that we grow attached to, and our brain doesn't know the difference between our imagined / the fictional characters that we grow in like relationship with versus our actual people.
I feel that spiritually. I have watched
Right?
I watch
No,
a lot.
That's like I feel it on a certain
I
level.
consume a lot of media, and I like when a TV show ends, when I lose a character in a show that I like or a film that I'm invested in, I will feel that loss and I will weep openly.
It's like the death of a friend when you finish a
No
good
spoilers, but the latest episode of WandaVision had me weeping openly. Again, fictional character.
And I wonder if that's because I also will openly cry at movies and television, and I typically equate that to I understand that feeling, or I can imagine how hard that would be to go through. So, and I will do spoilers because I just wrapped up season 7 of Star Wars Clone Wars because I'm doing like all the canon stuff this year is my goal.
Spoiler alert.
So good.
So if you have not watched season 7 of Clone Wars and you want to, jump ahead about 30 seconds. Yeah, 30 seconds to a minute.
I haven't watched it.
Are you gonna though?
Probably not.
Fair warning. Oh, it's Dave Filoni. He wrote on Avatar.
It's so good.
But there's the moment where Sokka and Rex have their whole final arc. Sokka, different person. Ahsoka and Rex have their whole final arc, and he has to kill all of his clone brothers. And she pulls off his helmet, and he's like weeping. And I was a mess.
And most of them are characters we also know. They've
Correct.
been consistent throughout the show.
Oh, it hit so hard. And so part of that I feel like was not these characters are dead. Part of it was, but I think a lot of it was like, could you imagine growing up with all these people who then turned on you, and for the safety of someone else you had to take out? Like, how?
And I think that's really, and we started with Naga and Pabu and got to this, but I start thinking about how these characters...
Rex is like the Naga of the Clone Wars.
You could say.
No, I'm going to connect it back. I got it. I got the connection. But like for me, having spent so much time with Aang and the gang, having spent so much time with Korra and Team Avatar, and having spent so much time in the comics and like really investing and reinvesting and rewatching, like the relationship continues to build. And so every time we find out a new perspective on one of these scenes, I'm like, oh, I never saw it that way. And again, as we go through Korra doing it the way that we're doing it, it's like these moments have so much like gravity, for lack of a better word, on my emotional response, right? And so it really feels true that I have it feels real.
The very first time
it feels familial
that I watched Korra break down and admit that she was scared to Tenzin in the season, it didn't hit me that hard. I was like, yeah, I get it. And then like the more and more you watch, the more and more you build it. Like now I cannot get through that episode without a tear, without at least a tear.
Well,
like,
and how much does that
down.
tell us? Like, and so I think that's beautiful. Like, let's think about this, because the first time we watched, these people are acquaintances. We see an acquaintance fall down and admit defeat. We're like, ooh, that sucks. Ooh. But when we start to see our family go through that, we have a physical response as well, right? And one of the things that I think is scientifically proven is that when we have the experience of grief or sadness in a loved one, we experience that as pain as well. So neurobiologically, we experience that pain the same if we are watching someone that we love in pain. And so that's something that I find to be true here as well, right? It's just like, ugh.
Like when Momo sits down in Appa's paw print.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow,
you just had to go there and like knife twist.
I just wanted everyone to feel the feels that's
I would
listening right
like
now.
to get to our next bullet point.
Moral of the story, like all of these people are our family.
So yes, pets. Pets definitely qualify as family.
There it is. We brought it back.
Yeah. Ugh.
I'm good at segues.
Okay, I have a moment. I have a moment. Really, right in the very beginning, Korra's talking to Mako, and it's like, we should just go knock their heads in, right? I'm paraphrasing, but it's very similar to that. And I feel like for me, when I'm with family, a lot of the times I am more equipped and better able to say things that I would never say in front of other people, because my filter comes off when I'm with my family and or chosen family, right?
Right.
Because what happens is I know that I'm not gonna be judged, to the detriment of me being kicked out of this family for saying what I'm gonna say. And it's not that I'm consciously thinking that. It's that, my filter just naturally starts to disappear when I'm with. It's not like I'm gonna take my filter off and start saying things. It's my filter goes away.
It's the safety built among that group of people.
Exactly.
Over a period of time.
And so I wonder if we can reframe what Korra said there. Is like, I wonder if Korra actually wants to just go beat their heads in, or if she's just saying that among
I think
family.
what we know about Korra so far is she's a woman of action.
This is true.
She is a woman of action, and she would much rather be doing something than waiting. She's not. It's interesting how you talk about Aang had to learn neutral Jing, and Korra seemingly has no neutral Jing.
No,
But
she does not.
we know that she's mastered the physical art of earthbending. So that's what's interesting. I wonder what the relationship might be there between how she can be such a physically proficient earthbender without the spiritual sides necessarily of waiting and knowing when to strike.
I feel like we always get her really crappy first draft, but she's very vocal about her first draft every time. But I also feel like she's good. I feel like this. I don't have any data that is concrete that I can point to in the episodes. That when someone challenges her and she knows she's wrong, I don't think she typically doubles down on being for the sake of being right. I feel like Korra does have a good job of being yeah, okay.
when it matters, I think you're right. I do think over dumb relationship stuff, she'll be like, no, I'm right.
You kissed me.
Exactly.
Yikes. Okay. All right. What else? Family. We haven't even got to the
family part. Yeah, we've just been focused on the
Sopranos.
And by that,
Avatar.
I mean Mako and Bolin, right? So here we go. Mako and Bolin, brothers, beautiful, beautiful relationship. They have their ups and their downs, but one of the moments in this episode that I found really touching was this moment of goodbye. That I love it when we see men cry. I love it. And Bolin is just.
Very in touch with his emotions.
Is Bolin not perfect in every way?
I adore
he
Bolin.
He is not perfect in every way.
Almost perfect in every way. I love him.
Let's get to season 2 Bolin and we'll start having some more critiques.
Yeah, but we're not there yet.
We have to approach this like the show was done, which is one season at a time.
There are some things that I would like to talk about Bolin with regarding his behavior.
We're not there yet. Anyway, moral of the story is I really love this moment. I think it's really touching, and I think we need more of it in media. Thank you.
I agree. So
you should watch Clone Wars.
Should. As we continue, Korra and Mako are on their solo mission to try and track down Amon, and they hide in the attic on Air Temple Island, and they see Councilman Tarlok.
D. Bradley.
Didn't y'all hear that in my recap? I said it really well.
I missed that, actually.
You know who voices Tarlok?
Must have sneezed.
You just said it.
D. Bradley.
Who,
D.
guess
Bradley
who else
Baker?
he voices all the clones in Clone Wars, Ben.
He does.
You should watch the show.
Does a really good Tamara Morrison. It's a really good Tamara Morrison impression.
Oh, he's so good.
D. Bradley is great. And not known for doing character voices, known for doing animal voices, but it's so underrated.
Pabu, he's Naga.
Right.
Appa.
He's Appa, he's Momo, but he's so good as just a normal voice actor also for people. And he gives a really good performance this episode. He gives us the big reveal that he is Amon's brother.
Mm.
Just in case if you like me missed that in Ben's recap.
I nailed it, y'all. I don't know what you're talking about.
So then we get the flashback that really kind of hits home why I wanted to talk about family this episode. You see that Yakone undergoes plastic surgery, which now exists in the world of Avatar, to change his appearance, and he goes to the Water Tribe and tries to settle down and have a family, and everything seems to be going okay. Until they have 2 sons that end up being waterbenders. And I wonder, what I wanted to talk about with you guys is, I wonder about Yakone's motivations. Was he ever really going to move on and it just like once the two boys were waterbenders, he was like, ooh, I have a chance for revenge? Or do you think he was only ever like trying to have offspring to try and get revenge?
Interesting.
I'm going to assume that he wanted an actual family and then saw opportunity and took it.
Yeah, that's my gut.
Right, kind of
option,
succumb
too.
to his weakness of wanting that vengeance.
Also, headcanon, did Yukon go see the Mother of Faces
If
and,
only,
and
Interesting choice.
hang out with Zuko's mother for a little bit?
if only they'd introduced that. In the,
Gosh.
'Cause
Oh.
she's
Also,
awesome.
spoiler alert for the comics. You should read them.
when people
They're great.
didn't know that popped up in the comics, Ben, until now.
Anyway, so
They would have just forgot. It would have fluttered away. But yeah, I think that Yukon
I
seized
think
an opportunity.
one of the things that we've talked about earlier in the season is just this idea of, we talked about like competition a little bit, and one of the things that emerges in that conversation is this idea that when you talk yourself into losing sometimes because based off of your mental frame, and I think he was in a mental frame of like, I'm done, there's nothing I can do, I just need to move on. And then as soon as the opportunity shows up, all of a sudden you have this whole new paradigm. And I don't think he had the imagination ahead of time to be like, oh, I'm gonna have 2 kids that are gonna be my tools for revenge. Like, I'm gonna,
Right.
like, the generous assumption is that I think he generally wanted to move on until this opportunity arose.
right.
But I mean, he's kind of like got a really bad rap going for him. So if it turned out to be that I was wrong, I would be like, no, that sucks. But so it goes, you know?
Yeah. And then we get a kind of tease of the family dynamic where as soon as before the boys were waterbenders, Tarlok says everything was good. That time was really happy in my life. And then once the bending is revealed, Yukon starts taking them on hunting trips to train them in bloodbending. And you see Noatak, who is Amon, already stepping up and protecting Tarlok from Dad a little bit. And so you see that he does care about equality in more ways than one. And
Typical
it kind of
of
shows
first children.
shows that he may have gotten lost a little bit to where he is now.
So I have a theory, and I want to lift it up, and I want to see what y'all's response is. So when I watched this with this lens, I immediately was like, okay, this is like, we're about to watch full-on trauma develop here. And one of the things that I kind of thought about was this idea that Yukon is grooming his children for abuse. And there are red flags for grooming. And we see several of them, right? And so, like, secrets, rule breaking, inappropriate communication, meaning like communication outside of when you're supposed to communicate, like alone time, all of these things are signs and red flags of grooming. And grooming for people that are listening is how would y'all help me frame that? It's
A little content warning.
yeah.
But it typically goes around child sexual abuse.
correct. And so this parenting style that he has is very, very, very similar to the grooming system, which starts with targeting, scouting ideal characteristics. He's like, oh, I have kids. Oh, they have water bending. Gaining trust. He takes them on like just bending, and then he teaches them about blood
Right.
bending, which is a secret. And then there's like, I'm going to fill this need. And then he starts to forced isolation and take them on these hunting trips. And then he maintains control. And these are all the steps of grooming, right? And
Yeah.
leading to abuse. And what we need to label this parenting style as is abuse,
It is.
right? This is a traumatic
Well, and
experience.
if that visual isn't enough, you see the same visual happening in the way that the wolves are treated, right? Like the way
Exactly.
that they bloodbend the wolves is exactly how he is trying to parent.
Yes.
And it's
I still can't get over the sound effect used by the
the
Foley
bone
artists
cracking
for,
and, like,
for
the-
and the like weird like bag of liquid sound effect for
Yeah.
bloodbending.
It's rough. Yeah, but like this is, I think one of the things I've been hearing recently, and not from our listeners, but in general, is that like the word trauma is being, we're throwing that around too much. And my opinion is that we're not throwing it around enough.
Like, trauma is happening.
Like,
right.
yes.
And we need to call it trauma.
We need to be calling
because
it
it's trauma.
Exactly. And this episode is a case study in family trauma, right?
It really is.
And it's just it's terrifying to think about what family can do when it misuses the familial relationship.
Right.
Right.
And they do their best to kind of spell it out for us, even if people who, may not be familiar with grooming or trauma specifically. They, hit the nail on the head with animal cruelty.
Yeah,
And they flat out, they explicitly say that Katara made bloodbending illegal as soon as the Team Avatar took power. Sounds wrong. That's not something Team Avatar would do. But the Katara...
Power with.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Katara made bloodbending illegal. So it hits home that, like, no, he's a criminal. He's doing bad things. This is not a good person.
But one of the things he says here, I think gets said in family context all the time. And it's this idea of, like, you need to live up to the family name. You need to, like...
Nope.
You need to make me proud. And that is language that
It's grooming language.
I struggle with it heavily. Because I've heard it before, and not in a sense of abuse from my parents and stuff, but there has been this, like, you need to, like, live up to the name, and you kind of go, like, okay, why? Like, what? Like, what? And then how prestigious do you think our name really is?
Right.
Right?
And not just live up to it, but live up to it that way, their way, the way that they would like you to live up to it.
And so that's one of those things that, how do we start to challenge family in those moments, our non-chosen family, but even our chosen family, when sometimes we feel like boundaries are being crossed, because Tarlok is young and tries to, like, poor Tarlok, no, I'm not gonna bloodbend my brother.
Yeah.
But like he was about to get the full physical force of Yukon because of that had Noatuk not stepped in.
Right. He says that felt awful. I don't want to make anyone feel that way.
And there's two things that are worth lifting up there. I want to be careful and make sure that we aren't romanticizing chosen family. Like, the way this episode has been framed so far has been like, chosen family good, normal family bad. And I shouldn't say normal family, biological family bad. And that's not true, right? It's not necessarily true. However, sometimes it is true. And I think it's worth lifting up that it can go both ways. Your chosen family can betray you just as much as
absolutely
your biological family. And your biological family can be just as loving and caring and accepting and nurturing as your chosen family, right? In this case, not so much.
Right. Very specifically, this story being told.
Yeah.
Well, and also, it's not a binary, right? It doesn't mean that you have to have one or the other, because
very much have both.
You can very much have both, and you can have parts of your chosen family that are stronger than your biological family when it comes to support system. Not necessarily because of the love that is there, but because of things like proximity, right? Like, I'm more likely to, like,
now.
I'm more likely to call a member of my chosen family to help me if my car breaks down. Like, that is that's just going to happen because my parents are 3 hours away, right?
Yep.
Like, that's a thing. And so I think it's all on a spectrum, right? It's not this binary of, like, you either have a chosen family or your biological family.
Like so many things. Not a binary spectrum.
Right. And the second thing I want to touch on about this scene is that we should never have to rely on the children to make the moral, ethical decision for us. And in this case, when Tarlok is saying this, it is just like, that is gut-wrenching for me, because it's like, we should never put children in a position where they have to make that decision. Period. Drop mic.
Is it possible that Tarlok thought he was making, not Tarlok, Yukon thought he was making the moral decision?
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Is when we are, like, sure, right? But when we are in a position, one of the things I'm learning, and I'm taking an ethics course right now, one of the things I'm learning is that ethics needs to be, it's never should be in a vacuum. It's never decided by one person. And we need to make sure that ethics is grounded in community rather than grounded in the narrative of one. Because what happens is when it's grounded in the narrative of one, often it's grounded in the narrative of the powerful, right? But even when it's grounded in the narrative of someone who is oppressed, that is still not the only ethic we should be relying on. It needs to be informed by everyone, and the voices of the oppressed need to be heavily valued. But I think we still need everyone's voice when we're creating an ethic to live by.
Right.
So I really struggle. I struggle with this.
I think. Go ahead.
You got it. All right. Well, okay. Yep. Centrism is where my head was going with this, because it's this idea of that right there is this, well, we got to have every voice, which is true, but also being ready to say, but if you say these things, you are automatically omitted from being a part of this conversation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You
Right?
do not
Like,
have quite the
my
moral
least-
compass.
My
For,
least
Your voice
favorite,
has been
like
voted off the island.
this understanding of centrism, where it's like American leftism versus like far right conservatism. It's like everyone should have health care. I don't believe that certain groups of people should be able to own land or exist. And then people in the center being like, these are both the same to me.
They're
extremes.
equally bad.
These are equally bad. And you're like, So I also want to like, there's,
are they though?
I think that's because there's also that kind of construction when we have these things about morals and ethics is
Well,
like,
it's to control the outliers is why you have community, right? It's to control both of those extremes, which is why it must be held in dialogue, not held in any individual vacuum.
I see that.
that was my point.
I think this episode does appreciate the trauma in the story it's telling. I mean, you see throughout the season, you've seen what's happened to Tarlok and what kind of person he's become. But you also see in this episode, I mean, Tarlok talks about it. He's like, it wasn't any easier on Noatak being the favorite one. And he Tarlok says suddenly, but I think this was over a period. He becomes cold and detached and just not the same kid that he was.
Yeah.
And you see, I mean, clearly this episode does understand Noatak is going through some trauma.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing that Tarlok does, not to necessarily romanticize Tarlok throughout this series. It seems like he has a better understanding of this does not excuse my actions in life. This might explain them, but you should still leave me here, right? Like, for multiple reasons, you should still leave me inside of this cage.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that people sometimes struggle with, is this idea of empathy and accountability. And I think we've said on this show several times, you get to have both. Like, you can have empathy for a person's decisions and why they made a decision a certain way. That doesn't mean they're free from the consequences of that decision.
Exactly.
So I kind of appreciate Tarlok. I think at this point he's broken. He sees everything. He has apologized.
He's had a
to
reckoning,
Korra.
right? It's the reckoning, the rumble, the revolution.
Exactly.
He's lost his privilege.
It's a Brene Brown reference.
Who? And so I think that part of that is it's good to kind of see that also lifted up, of this idea of like, we understand Noatak. We have a better understanding.
We do.
That does not mean that he is free from consequences for all the actions that he is taking. Very
Absolutely.
violent actions at this point.
Correct. Any other big moments of family that we want to touch on in the episode? What have we missed? Anything?
The only thing I can think of is just this understanding of what we inherit from our parents and what we take with us as we move forward, and being and just constantly thinking through that. And we've talked about this when we've talked about legacy and we've talked about inheritance before this season. So I think it's just worth highlighting again of we have to constantly be checking our own biases and things as we go through life to say, what are the things that I like that I've learned and inherited from my family, and then what are the things that I very much need to leave to the side.
And I think it's important to lift up that sometimes things that are not great can help us. And so sometimes we get into this mode of having a defense mechanism that is exactly that. It's a defense mechanism. It's protecting us from something, when in the long term, it maybe ceases to help us. And so how do we grapple with this idea that something that we may have done to protect ourselves from the abuse of a family member in the past may have helped us then, but we need to acknowledge it, say, thank you for helping me when you did. I no longer am in need of this service, and then letting it go. Right? And that's some of the things that's really difficult with some of the things we inherit from our family is like, I've inherited lots of defense mechanisms. I have inherited lots of ways of interacting with people that were built to protect me, right? And I need to be able to cognitively recognize that, yes, those things served me and kept me safe at that time. I no longer am in need of this habit, and I need to let it go. That's what therapy's for.
We're all on board with therapy here.
Let's do it.
Full endorsement.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. All right, anything else? Or are we ready to take a quick break and jump into our devotion and gratitude?
Not at this time.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. We'll be right back.
Sorry, somebody had to say it. Max doesn't have a mic.
Hey friends, welcome back. It's time for our devotion, and this week we are very, very excited to talk about fire and what fire has to offer in terms of thinking about family, which I think, of hearth and home, there's a lot of cool things you can talk about with fire and family. So, that's also alliterative. I didn't even think about that. Anyway, we're back, and Cameron's still with us, and who wants to talk about family and fire first, and a goal that they're setting, an intention they're setting for this coming week? On your mark, get set.
I'm happy to go.
They're making eyes. They're making eyes. Okay, Sunshine's going. Go. Cool.
The pet conversation really struck home. I don't do the best job of walking my dog and spending time with my dog during the work week as I should because of, we go on walks. They just typically aren't very long ones. And so I would like to focus on my pet care this upcoming week because Rufio brings a lot of warmth into my home. And
if you don't know,
I just learned that pet's
Rufio
name, and I love it.
is based off. Sunshine, you want to tell us? How did you name your dog?
Twofold.
Dante Basco.
It's Rufio from Hook, played by Dante Basco. But also Rufio was an old camp legend of the summer camp that we used to work at, which I believe the legend probably also started via Hook. So
it's all rooted in Dante
Basco.
Basco.
Rooted in Dante Basco. So yes,
everything comes back to Dante Basco.
Right? It's all roads lead to.
Yeah. So my little gray Labrador, if you ask my landlord, he's certainly not a pit bull. So my little gray Labrador, in case my landlord listens to this podcast, Rufio. So I'm gonna spend more time with him.
Love it. I love that intention. Cameron.
What struck me when talking about fire consumes. It will just consume and consume and consume. And that, for me, obviously we just finished, talking about Yacon and how vengeance consumed him and ended up destroying his second chance at his family. And what that calls me to do is in this not quarantine, because America has not been quarantining, but
fair.
In this
I like to call it capitalism light.
Yeah, in this diet lockdown.
I hate how true that is.
It's unfortunate. In this diet lockdown, I have been spending a lot of time with my fiance, who I love and adore. In case he listens to this podcast,
just in case.
But if he doesn't,
I'm just kidding. I love my fiance, but we've been spending a lot more time around each other with working from home and just being in the same place so often. And what that's done is taught us both a lot about each other in good ways. But it can be trying. It can be trying to be that close to anybody for so long with no you time. And what this is calling me to do is to not let these little things that do not matter consume me to the point that I I make a fight out of nothing so that's what I'm going to work on this week.
I love that. It's interesting you talk about consumption because that's a similar vein to what I was thinking about. I was thinking about how if I think about the relationship between two people as a fire, right? As metaphor for fire, right? And if I think about the family nature of that, what that means is there are going to be some times when I'm feeding off the warmth of a fire and I need the other person to keep fueling it. And then there are times when I need to pour fuel on the fire to make sure that it's a reciprocal mutual relationship, right? And how do I not continuously take from some and and like only give in others. Recognize when I can bask in the warmth where we're both throwing on logs at the same time, right? That's when it feels truly in balance, if you will. And so I really want to focus on the relationships that I'm in. And when I am giving a lot, it's not that that's a bad thing. It's that I need to just assess whether that's where I want to be, right? Because I just need to focus on that. So my goal this week is to kind of just look at those relationships who are the family in my life, chosen or otherwise, where I just want to assess that relationship and be like, is this the amount of giving and receiving that I want in this relationship? And so that's my goal, is to just assess and then figure out what I want to do from there.
Love that.
Yeah, I do. I think that's a good idea.
Well, everyone, super thankful for your sharing, but now it's time for us to get to our other gratitude that we're going to give, and that's our gratitude for our characters.
I'm so grateful
from this episode. So who would like to go first?
Grateful for gratitude.
It's a wonderful thing.
I'll go first.
Love it.
As is the norm for me in most episodes, I am grateful for Bolin because
Who isn't grateful for Bolin all the time?
Adore Bolin. I think normalize emotional men, first of all. But in this episode in particular, expanding on that, and Ben, you kind of touched on this, just the relationship between he and his brother in the goodbye scene, and the fact that, we're allowing men, particularly as far as I know, cisgender straight men in this series to be so openly emotional. That's what I was grateful for this week.
I'm grateful for that too, but that's not who I'm going to say. So I'm picking Yakon's wife, who we unfortunately do not learn her name in the episode, nor, if you do any research, is there a name for her, at least that we found.
The Avatar Wiki failed us.
I know.
There's no canon name
correct
for this character.
We will be accepting on our Patreon page, Facebook, if you have any names that you would like to submit for canon. Anyway, that's
we're in control of that.
Yeah. But the reason I'm grateful for Yakon's wife is she was in a relationship with a convicted man who has done pretty atrocious things. And as far as we know, that relationship wasn't bad.
It seemed to be pretty pure until...
Exactly. And it seemed like that, quote, impurity was with Yakon and his children, their children, I should say. And to her, she only had, like, just a small side of that. And so I'm grateful that she was loving and kind to this person. And I'm grateful that Yakon got a relationship that was hopefully able to teach him something about what it is good to be in relationship. And I am grateful that she was that person. I am sad that she had to experience so much grief and trauma due to his actions, but I am grateful that she was hopefully a guiding light for him and potentially one of the few. So I'm grateful for that.
I'm gonna be grateful for Gamu from the beginning of the episode. I appreciate the welcomingness. Those are words. Nailed it. I just appreciate the environment that he creates and builds for everyone who is there struggling, and I think that he takes up a very important role in that process, and I'm grateful that he was there.
I love it. Well, y'all, this has been fun. This has been a good episode, I think.
Cameron, welcome back. Thank you for being back.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
We know that season 2 is your favorite, so we'll have to find an episode, maybe one involving Juan and
Disclaimer, I do like Legend of Korra. I am not a hater. I appreciate Korra, and the misogyny that is rampant in the fandom just grates on me. I love Korra. I'll talk about it anytime.
Fantastic. Well, we'd love to have you back. Max, thank you so much. I know you can't speak with us right now, but thank you for all that you do. I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
And you can follow us at BNB_pod on Facebook,
Do they not know
Twitter,
this at this point?
Instagram, all the places, Patreon. We do a lot of cool stuff.
You messed up the recap. I messed up the outro. We're even.
And this has been Ben.
This is Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.